Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Distribution Strategy Group program, Understanding the New Wave of E-commerce Technology. My name is Ian Heller. I'll be joined here shortly by two fantastic panelists. We'll talk about what's new, what's coming, what's state of the art in e-commerce technology. We're going to get into subjects like personalization and AI and some exciting use cases. Make sure that you weigh in with your questions, because we love to have our conversation guided by the audience. There's a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. Feel free to jump in, ask what you want. I would get your questions in early. They tend to stack up later on if you wait. So if you want your question answered, if you want a better chance of having it answered, I would ask earlier rather than later. Now, a couple things to do some business before we get started. First of all, my genius business partner, Jonathan Bine, PhD, has invented a system called DemandRx. It's a proprietary model that estimates the account potential of customers and relevant prospects in total and by product category. That's the wallet share analysis up at the top that shows you the gap by category for a specific customer. This enables you to make strategic and tactical decisions about what you're going to sell and to whom you will sell it. When you understand the potential, your sales and marketing functions are much more efficient and effective because they can focus on the right products for customers and prospects. DemandRx provides wallet share growth, helps you identify your ideal customer profile, helps you target the right prospect from our database of 48 million companies, helps you measure market share. Want to know how to build your sales territories? Want to know where to invest in branches? Want to know your wallet share, your market share? You should subscribe to DemandRx. It also integrates with leading CRM systems, so the data is available at the fingertips of your sales reps. It's a phenomenal program. You can reach out to Jonathan Bine. That's jbine at distributionstrategy.com, Jbein. Phone number is 303-898-8636. That's 303-898-8636. Call before midnight tonight. I'm just kidding. That's an old Ronco commercial. Okay. Also, I'm so excited. We've got our next Applied AI for Distributor Conference. This is June 4th through 6th at the Chicago Marriott O'Hare. So, I mean, early bird pricing is still in place. You're going to want to jump on this. We've already sold about 50 seats. We've got months to go. We only have about 350. We got 15 technology companies already signed up. We had this last year. It was a huge success. This year's even bigger, even better. We'll have sessions on things like cybersecurity in the age of AI, what investors expect from distributors when it comes to incorporating AI and building it into your tech stack, how to use AI to drive sales and drive efficiencies. And we'll have Zach Cass, who was a huge hit last year, the former head of go-to-market for OpenAI, back as one of our keynoters. It's a marvelous event. You can scan the QR code there or go to appliedai4distributors.com. There are discounts if you bring more than 3 people, or 3 or more people, I should say. So go to that website, sign up for the show. You're going to love it. Just like everybody did last year, we got tremendous ratings for that program. Now, I want to bring in our panelists who are going to help me with this discussion on what's new in e-commerce technology. So I'd like to welcome to the stage Jacoby Zakretsky and Dave Bent. Jacoby, we'll start with you as far as introductions go. How are you today, my friend?
Doing very well. Ian, you nailed the pronunciation. Appreciate that, dude.
I worked at it, man. I worked at it. If you guys could have listened to the pre-call, I screwed it up like 4 times in a row, but I got it right when it mattered.
Nailed it. 10 out of 10, stuck the landing. Yeah, the pre-call, folks, we should have had some outtakes because it was interesting, for sure.
So, Jacoby, tell me about yourself and your career. I know you spent a long time at a very, very large electrical distributor in charge of their technology. And now you're supporting distributors. So go through your background and what you guys do at Luminous Labs.
Yeah, so I was born Christmas Eve, 1988. Just kidding. So Jacoby Zakretsky, lead our business architecture function here at Luminous Labs. My background has been in IT for the last 15 years, where I started out as an infrastructure engineer, configuring routers, virtualization platforms, unclogging pick printers in the warehouse, that kind of thing. And then eventually found myself in the VP of IT position at a national distributor here in the US for 5 years. They're just helping take the technology organization from what I'll call reactive firefighter to a trusted business partner of enablement, which sounds easy, but it was a lot of trials and tribulations to get there through the business. If you're not familiar with Luminous Labs, we're a digital systems implementer and integrator focused on platforms that include e-commerce, content management systems, search, order management systems, and PIMS. We've been around for about 13 years, and our bread and butter is truly with our engineering prowess, where we implement and integrate your systems together for a seamless experience, both internally with employees and externally with customers. One thing I like to say is your business complexity is our pleasure. So we're not afraid if you have 6 different ERP systems with hundreds of thousands of products and it's all a crazy mess, and you'd like to unify it with a digital footprint, we enjoy that. So some might call us gluttons for punishment, but gotta say we enjoy problem solving and not reinventing the wheel. So excited to be here and happy to jump into the topics.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jacoby. Now, Dave Bent, I never have a hard time with your name. I don't know why. But you've been in our programs before. Welcome back. It's good to see you, my friend. Why don't you give the audience a bit about your background and what you're doing today at ECI Software Solutions?
Yeah, absolutely. Ian, thank you for having us. And Ian, I think your beard is the same color as mine, meaning I spent my career really in IT, at least up until about 7 or 8 years ago. I think a little bit like Jacoby, actually running IT in large, actually global Fortune 500 companies. And so I started in IT when there was definitely no internet. I doubt Bill Gates was a millionaire, let alone a billionaire. So it's a long time ago. I won't state the year, but really a whole career has been working with manufacturers and distributors, in the last 20 years with distributors. And the first B2B website I put up was 1998, selling automotive parts to job shops. I would say it was not super successful. So a lot of lessons learned, but that's kind of the start. And kind of fast forward to today, I would say actually certainly the last 15 years, if you're in a distribution company or a manufacturer, e-commerce was a key part and business to business. And so I actually was CIO of Avnet, left Avnet and joined up with some people I'd known quite a while who had founded a B2B e-commerce platform solution back in the UK in 2006. They had just re-architected the platform. So this is about 2017. Re-architected from the ground up. Fast forward to today, we were acquired by a company called ECI out of Texas about 15 months ago. And we now are the e-commerce division within ECI, offering our solution, which is actually called Evolution X, across all the distributors and manufacturers in the verticals ECI supports, but also in other verticals. So our solution is deployed into business supplies, industrial products, MRO, electrical, plumbing, HVAC. Talk a little bit about a gas and welding distribution industry. It's a little bit different, but broad-based of supporting distributors. And ECI itself actually is a large global company, about 23,000 customers, but the alignment for us is ECI is devoted to supporting independent dealers and manufacturers. And it's kind of aligns with what we've been doing as an e-commerce provider. And so we've got over 500 customers globally now and just continue to expand. Business has been awesome and it's great to be back with you, Ian.
Fantastic. Thanks. I think enough of these slides. Now let's just talk. You have something in common, which is that both of you have been, very senior technology leaders at very large distribution companies. And now you work for technology companies that support distributors, which is a great combination because you understand what it's like to be a consumer of your services. And at the same time, you're better at delivering those services because you've been a customer. So why don't we start with something positive, because there are lots of negative stories about e-commerce in B2B. Let's start with something positive. How about a success story or two, something that went, story about something that went really well with e-commerce, a use case that gives hope to people who may be concerned about their path towards online success. Jacoby, we'll start with you.
Yeah, it's a great question. And, oftentimes you see white papers and case studies and you see the best of the best out there, right, in publications. And I think the fact of the matter is everyone's version of success is different. And so this works on a bell curve, right? So success doesn't always have to mean you're in a white paper. It can be small things that happen over the course of time. And one thing I can say, over the last year and a half or so is a couple organizations, one of which is a large food distributor here in the US. That's a public company. They're going through some major kind of M&A activities, and they have ERP systems, Infor, Dynamics, all sorts of different things. And their business strategy and their business model isn't to acquire and consolidate those systems. It is to acquire and leave those separate systems because their whole business runs off of those. Everyone's job in the system is that. And so I think affecting e-commerce is a big part of that. But one of the strategies there is they wanted a unified digital shared service globally while having the local national offices still remain in their systems of record. So one of the big success stories is just allowing for that flexibility in the technology now, and digital and e-commerce is there to support those types of things, where it's not a very good business model if someone like Dave were to say, hey, to implement our solution, you need a new ERP system. That probably won't go so well.
Yeah, that's
And so
not
I think
good.
there's a lot of success and flexibility to say, listen, you don't have to change out the millions of dollars that you've invested in training and support and all that stuff. You can still make your hopes and dreams happen with the legacy back office technologies, because those don't change very often. So I would just say a lot of recent successes have been not having to change out too many parts of the airplane while still allowing you to fly digitally. And it doesn't have to be really a change management nightmare kind of a thing. But that's just a really grand example. But smaller ones is simply just allowing for a PIM or catalog management system to allow folks to update product enrichment details without using millions of spreadsheets, right? The digital merchandiser's life is extremely easy, getting out of Excel as much as possible. So that's kind of stuff happens daily, right? So there's always success stories that people can be proud of.
Yeah, I think the capabilities are evolving quickly. And so some of what you're talking about, there were tools for that didn't exist 10 years ago or maybe 5 years ago. And so you have to stay up on it, right? Because it's easy to have assumptions that turn out to be no longer true when you're implementing technologies.
Yep.
Dave, how about you go? Give us a success story or
Yeah,
two.
actually, I'll just go back a little bit. I guess it's that ancient history that I carry with me, Ian. But just going back a little bit, I ended up being part of the office supplies or business supplies distribution, or as they call themselves, dealers in that industry rather than distributors. But that was kind of back in the let's see, it would have been, if you think about the 2000s, and really that industry pioneered B2B e-commerce. If Distribution Strategy Group had been around then, you would have been writing about Staples and Office Max and Office Depot. And they discovered that they were in B2C retail. The retail stores are still there, but they realized the B2B market was much bigger. And they truly pioneered and were leaders in B2B kind of best practices. And I think it's also where when Amazon came into B2B and they did that experiment in 2012, they started in office supplies. And so I was in that industry, and it's kind of carried forwards. It's like, wow, we can really do something different in a B2B environment. And so if I fast forward to really the last couple of years, I think one of the things we're seeing is we're enabling customers and industries to sell more and more sophisticated solutions online. So in our case, we found our way in, or were invited into, an industry called gas and welding distribution. And not really broadly known, but if you think of gases, there's medical gases, you can't make a beverage, you can't go to a brewery without gases, there's industrial gases, you can't have a cannabis farm without gases, you're not going to be in a hospital very long if there isn't good oxygen. So a fascinating industry that we all kind of take for granted. And then it's tied into, generally ties into kind of industrial MRO, so welding supplies, and really had zero traction online. Even the major players that you would think of, like an Airgas that we may have heard of, or a Lindy,
Sure.
really not a super strong presence online. And could you actually sell gas? Could you actually sell gases in cylinders online? So fast forward, without getting into too much detail, maybe we'll come back to it, but and building actually on what Jacoby said, most of them had deep investment in the ERP in the industry, which for independents comes from a company called Computers Unlimited. So, and it does a great job in that kind of back-end ERP, but how do you then bring this online? And so, again, building on what Jacoby said, it ended up being a partnership with CU, like a deep partnership where we brought the e-commerce, they kept advancing and enhancing the back end. And And now we have really quite a nice presence of some pretty large independent distributors who are trading online, including selling gases and cylinders. And like that third component, so you got the commerce, you've got the connectivity, as Jacoby said, the ERP, but content, the product content, you've got to have, we all know, you got to have great product content to put on a website to make it work. And so another partner stepped up and kind of figured out, okay, how do we do content for gases? And so I just think it's awesome because we keep advancing where you might think there's a boundary. We can't do that online. Well, maybe we can. Maybe we can have customer engagement. And so for me, it's been a lot of fun in that industry, and we just keep going. Again, sophisticated product sales online, machinery, configurators is a big part of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, it's
I want to
interesting.
hit on
Yeah,
I want to hit
go
on
ahead,
that
Jacoby.
point,
Go
Dave.
ahead.
That's a great point. I think that in the world of digital technology, it's so far ahead where actually the challenge of barrier isn't technology anymore, it's just operationalizing it. So,
Yeah.
It's pretty easy to buy a really advanced platform, but then you go, who's
Yeah.
going to do it with what hands?
Yes.
Right.
Right.
And so history would tell me it falls on the IT folks, but then the IT folks end up responsible for everything when really maybe they should just be the custodian. Right. So it's a common trap that I see is the operational side of it. But
oh, I agree. I always say there's no technology projects. There's only business projects enabled by technology.
Yeah.
The business has to champion and lead. But that's happening more and more. I think business people are now way more aware than in the, if you went back in time, aware of kind of IT, and we're going to end up talking about AI here at some point. More aware about AI as well than if you look back kind of 20 years in technology awareness in business.
Yeah, the Staples is also a cautionary tale. They were $25 billion, the second largest e-commerce site in the world. Amazon focused on office supplies. A few years later, Staples lost a quarter of its volume, was losing money, and nobody
100%.
knows their size today because they're owned by a PE company, but they're probably 5 or 6 billion. And I think you have some protection when you do more complex products. And to your point, the gas cylinders are complex because the cylinders get reused, right? So you're only selling part of it. So you're tracking an asset at the same time that you're selling a good.
Yeah.
And I think that complexity is helpful. I also think some of these new tools are providing solutions that weren't possible before AI. Right. I wrote a column that's coming out today on that. But let's talk a little bit about, I have a question. Hold on. As a manufacturer, we struggle with keeping up with our e-commerce. However, we also struggle with having our distributors update their e-commerce sites with new manufacturing information. So they have old product descriptions, images, and even part numbers and names that are still on their sites after years of requesting the updates. E-commerce is only as good as the data shown. How can we make these update requests easier to execute for distributors? Who wants to jump on that one?
Well, I'm happy to take a run, and Jacoby can
Okay.
add in. We always say you have to have great commerce, you have to have awesome content, which is the topic here, and connection to your ERP. And so we pretty much won't sell you an e-commerce platform if you don't have great content, and we also won't really sell it to you if you don't have a way to keep it maintained. So I would say in our case, we have partners for content. Sometimes it's a wholesaler that the distributor is selling on behalf of. But when it isn't, I think a great example for us is we have a partner called Distributor Data Solutions out of Utah, DDS, who focuses solely on working with manufacturers to assemble content from those manufacturers and then passing it to the appropriate distributors. And part of it actually is syncing up, in our case, syncing the product file in the ERP with the rich content that DDS has and updating it, whether it's nightly or weekly. So I think there are partners out there like DDS, and obviously the e-commerce partner has to play a role in keeping that all linked. But it's definitely been a major challenge, but I think it's one the industry's starting to truly overcome.
Jacoby.
Yeah, I agree, Dave, completely. The folks like DDS and others that provide kind of summarized product data from manufacturers down to distributors is a great resource, and one you can commercialize and pay for. But at the end of the day, I'm a pretty big believer in that your website is a direct reflection of your business's communication channels and collaboration channels. And so this is commonly seen with distributors and manufacturers of just vendor management, partner management kind of thing. I fully believe manufacturers and distributors all have the right individual intentions, but it is a partnership where if the manufacturer is selling directly online, also with distributors, there's some skin in the game there, and some channel conflict, things like that. But at the end of the day, one thing that you don't want to do is have the distributor define kind of product specs and things like that on their own, particularly if it involves like safety data sheets. So it always starts from the manufacturer. And if the distributor wants to kind of do their own thing within certain guardrails, that's fine, but also kind of in a governance of the manufacturer in a way. So it's a top-down approach, but Allison, it's a common problem. If product data was perfect everywhere, there wouldn't be multi-millions of dollar businesses built off of it. So,
Yeah.
but it does affect many things, including things like search as well, right? There's a downstream effect here that you really have to tackle it at the source.
So I don't know if you guys know the answer to this question, but JJ wants to know, using a company like DDS that provides the PIM data, who owns that data at the end of the day?
Well, if you're talking to 3M, for example, 3M would say they own the base data of the product. Like they want to make sure that you have the latest data, and to Jacoby's point, like the latest safety data sheets. Right. I would say it's got its challenges, because the data itself, without being organized into a taxonomy, is also not very valuable, like the actual just raw product data. And so you can have a lot of debate. Sometimes you'll have third parties doing a taxonomy, and arguably you could say they own that, but I would say it's somewhat loosely defined. If you obviously create your own product data, and people obviously do, I would say, yeah, that's effectively in your ownership. But I would say it's still a little bit vague. Even in legal contracts, it's often somewhat vague. I don't know, Jacoby, what do you see?
Yeah, that can be a surprise on the terms and conditions when maybe you decide to switch vendors. Like, hey, we actually own that. You can't take it with you. And then, oh, what do we do now? So that's one of those when you're picking out solutions, things like that. That's a great question to ask. Who owns this data? In particular, when I would go through and evaluate technologies, you always think about what's my exit strategy. Before you even sign the contract, what's my exit strategy kind of a situation, because it's all about risk management. It's a great question, JJ, and one that should be done with due diligence on the front end as much as possible.
Yeah, I ran a website one time and we switched from a branded vendor to a non-branded vendor. But in the search term, if you put in the old brand, it would take you to the generic version. And we got a cease and desist letter from which I understood, and we pulled, and like, I get that. And we pulled it. Let's talk about personalization, because in the consumer world, that's often sort of a feel good. Let's see if we can entice you to buy more. And B2B personalization is much more about meeting the functional requirements for the customer in many cases, or meeting the legal requirement or contractual requirements. So Jacoby, let's start with you. What's your experience in B2B personalization? What's the state of the art? Where's it going?
Yeah, it's a great question. And the first step to me is all about just customer segmentation kind of a thing, like who are our customers? And that can be a difficult one to define. And maybe you have that field in an ERP system. Something that organizations will do is segment their customers based upon how commissions are paid out, which is sometimes not always going to relate down to segmentation in a digital experience as well as you would think. And so I think first step is just bucketizing your customers into segments, and then figuring out how you're going to market to each one of them individually. For example, if I log into your website and I'm an industrial customer, do I see certain categories versus not, right? Do I see certain promotions versus not? Do I get a certain added business value benefit because I'm a certain customer? Maybe I'm a platinum industrial customer where I'm allowed to do VMI with you. I've unlocked that capability because I spend millions of dollars with you as a distributor or something like that. And so I think a lot of it just comes down to the core data integrity of how you segment your customers first and foremost. Now, there are certain nuanced things you can do on your website, like when they log in, have their logo there, greet them with their first name, things like that, for sure. But at the end of the day, the personalization comes down to who they are as a customer and how you serve them with, number one, products, but number two, services that go along with it. So I'm a pretty big believer in digitizing as much as possible your value-added services, because if not, listen, distribution can just be a race to the bottom if you're just selling widgets, right? So try to segment and have your own version of personalization on your website as much as possible, but doesn't, mean you need to send them a text message for a BOGO deal tomorrow. That's more of a D2C thing, right? You don't need to be doing that stuff. You can. I'm saying you can't, but
right.
Sure.
Yeah.
Dave?
Yeah. Ian, I think I actually think it's super important in B2B, if not one of the most important attributes about the experience you're trying to create. And I know, Jacoby, like what your business does, it's all about trying to create the best customer experience, right? And same for us. And so when you think about the experiences we all go through, the more personalized it is, the more we feel, okay, I'm going to go back there. And so we focus on the personalization, exactly as Jacoby said. You can create customer segments, but we're really trying to say, okay, once you get past the basics of B2B, the number one ROI is actually getting existing customers to spend more with you. There's all about getting new customers, all that stuff that we know, and it certainly is critical in B2C. But how do you create loyalty and get existing customers, most of whom, if you actually, Ian, you might have more kind of data on this, but generally what we see is most buyers, people buying from a distributor, whether it's an electrical contractor or an industrial MRO customer, they've got 2 or 3 sources, maybe 4, sometimes for supply chain reasons, like we all know, especially recently. But how do we drive loyalty? And so, yeah, definitely segmentation. We offer procurement controls, meaning for a larger end customer, help them, like the CFO or the procurement director, manage the spend with you as the supplier. So helping them set up budgets, routing orders for approval, tracking against department spend. And when, I think I've sat on the other side of the table, as we said in the introductions, most of my career, what you see then is the CFO or the procurement director says, hey, we're going to focus all our spend in this product segment with this distributor. So there's so many aspects to personalization, but it's basically create that customer experience, all the things, Jacoby said. But we think it's critical, and I think AI is actually going to take it to another level. And probably we're going to come back to that, I'm guessing.
Yeah, we will. I think
what does AI do?
We're going to get there in a minute. I want to have Jacoby comment on the topic you brought of customer loyalty. So my philosophy or my experience in marketing is relevance builds tolerance for frequency. So if somebody's really interested in my emails, they'll accept them more frequently. I love motorcycles and photography, so you can send me endless numbers of emails and I'll read them all on those subjects. But if you send me emails on baby clothes, well, my kids are grown up and I'm grandkids, I'm not interested, right? So I'll unsubscribe quickly. And if you keep it up, I'll mark you as a spammer, right? So I think, what you've talked about earlier about creating segments, Jacoby, is really important, because if you do have that industrial customer that you mentioned log onto your website and they see, their sale on carpentry tools, they're going to go, this company's not for me, right? So how do you get that extra transaction that Dave talked about? And, what are the technologies out there that help you build loyalty and additional sales with current customers?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one of the big things that, work with companies now in some of the processes, just simply asking the first question of, what is the purpose of your digital footprint? If you were to look at this holistically in your business, what is the purpose of your website? And most people's off the cuff answer is going to be to make more money, which generally sometimes will be true, but really it's not that. It's a choice of typically 3 things: net new revenue, convert offline to online sales, from $1 from one pocket to the other, or simply just improve the customer experience. And then the next question is, well, how do you define customer experience in your business? And boy, there are wildly different answers you will get across the organization, right? And the most common one now at this juncture is any interaction that our customer is going to have with us offline or online, phone, email, in the branch, whatever, right? And so I think one of the biggest metrics, or one of the biggest ways to get that extra order in, is simply just increasing utilization of your website through managing your business with the distributor. for example. So I can log in, I can see my order history, I can see my open invoices, I can see my credit limit, I can see my return process, I can see a mini version of my ERP online. That's
Right.
essentially what we're talking about. And it just so happens we're using the website to do that, which, by the way, you can also buy things on the website, right? And so you're using that as kind of, for lack of a better words, everyone has their intranet, which is kind of like a hub of the organization of how they do things internally, where your website is truly your extranet. It is the hub
Yeah.
of how you manage your business, right? And so trying to get people to use your digital e-commerce website just as a way to manage their business self-service is a fantastic first step of, if you're the old two guys in a screwdriver kind of a situation as a contractor going on, I need to manage my business in QuickBooks, look at my open invoices, pay my bill, whatever. Oh, by the way, I also need this for a job tomorrow. I might as well get that too while I'm here to pick it up at the branch. That small thing will add up. Like that snowball effect will start to add up over the course of time, where your website's just the de facto way that they will kind of manage their business with you and still call inside sales and outside sales and still email and do those things. But, not many people want to get phone calls and emails at 9 o'clock at night. They can just do it online, possible. So
Yeah.
I think that's a good incremental way versus, we need to have a promotion to get more sales. No, just increase the self-service capabilities and you will get that.
Yeah. And I mean, people are tempted to do those promotions because it gives them a way to prove ROI on the website. And attribution is much harder in B2B because you have an enormous amount of shopping and, people putting together orders on the website, but they don't place the order on the website because that's not their purchasing process. They have to use a PO. So they may be on your website every day and they may be doing things that are highly value added, don't exist in B2C, right? Like contact my sales rep, track my delivery does, check on your account status, look at your open invoices. So you're getting all kinds of value out of this website that doesn't turn it directly into sales, but probably creates that stickiness, that loyalty that we've talked about. And they're doing a bunch of shopping on the website that's not coming through the shopping cart. So there's all this value created on B2B websites that doesn't get counted because distributors use the stupid shopping cart revenue as though it's the full measure of value they're getting out of the website. And so they have these ROI models that are completely wrong. And they undervalue the website and they don't invest in them, and the gap between the has and has nots and technology grows. Obviously, this is a pet peeve for me. So, Dave, what's a better way to do attribution? I mean, what are you really getting out of your website, and how do you know?
So I'm just going to go back a little bit and build on what Jacoby said, and actually what you just said, the value of the website, right? One of the things I love actually going out on sales calls, meeting to our customer and going out and doing a sales call. And it's just, I always think it's great. Simple question to ask is, what else would you like to be able to do on the website that we don't yet offer? And it's amazing what comes out. And all the basics are usually there, right? As Jacoby said, the invoices, all of that stuff. But what else would you like to do? And then we've also actually seen, if you start to do analytics of your various customers and their buying behavior, this goes actually way back when for me, is like, hey, this customer looks like this other customer over here, but they're not buying. This other customer isn't buying this whole segment of product. And we've actually found when somebody's bringing up a website and they start to display products, people will say, hey, didn't even know you sold that. It's amazing. I'm going to start buying that from you. So the website definitely gives you a greater opportunity to expose things. And, when you've done the segmentation, as Jacoby said, like, well, why is the buying pattern different when they look to be in a similar segment? So, and then just last but not least, loyalty programs, implementing a loyalty program. We have a medical supplies distributor in Canada that he got the idea from the HD, the Home Depot, the Pro program, which is in store and online, set up his own Pro program and was amazed by what it did with both hospital groups and all smaller dentists and doctors. So I think loyalty programs is pretty straightforward stuff. At least if you have a B2B platform, that should be an opportunity to exploit. So I think I went back a little bit on the question, Ian. So pose your next thought, or if you want to just move along.
No, I want to get Jacoby's view because I think I think attribution is hard in B2B.
Yeah.
And it's not our job to tell customers what channels to buy from, right? So I'll see distributors and, we'll give you 5 off, or we'll pay our sales reps more commission for online orders. It's like, well, that just feels like we're screwing with the customer's intentions, right? Rather than doing the hard job of getting the attribution right. So do you have experience with, trying to get the attribution right? I know, in your roles, Jacoby.
Yeah, and that's one of the hardest things about e-commerce and digital is, again, it's a direct reflection of pretty much the rest of your business. It's like you have transparent walls now with your business. You're showing everything real time. So when organizations will ask or say, I want real-time inventory, real-time price, and I will usually say, are you sure? As kind of a little bit of a joke, but more of like,
Right.
do you have the back office system to support that? What if you don't have a strong inventory position? Now we're showing that real time. Is that okay for you? Same with the pricing. But to answer the direct question, I think a lot of it just comes down to truly business partnerships. So if you have an e-commerce or digital part of your organization that is very siloed, it's going to feel siloed to the customer too at the end of the day. And so I think very, very, just as much as e-commerce is kind of maybe a channel, I think it's more of a business partner operation and function than anything else. Because e-commerce is kind of one of those areas of the business that touches just about every part of the organization, maybe besides HR with the careers page situation, right? But accounting, supply chain, pricing, customer service, all of them it touches, right? And so I think bringing kind of an early business partner mindset in the process, which means you're not just implementing a new site, you're going through a whole bunch of change management things at the same time and tackling more than you really might have thought you would, but that's okay. It's for the greater good. And simply, if you just start to measure beyond just direct revenue and just utilization, logins,
Right.
registrations, password resets, the typical things that they would do on the website, and you start to use that and see those numbers increasing, by nature, a side effect is going to be hopefully increased sales, hopefully increased customer satisfaction, things like that. But I really love when customers say our core metric of success is utilization.
Yeah.
I love that. I know that that's kind of the right mindset versus we want to make double. Well, now we're going to start to incentivize maybe the wrong behaviors if we try to focus too much on that.
Yeah. We did an analysis of an electrical distributor that had 1% of its revenue coming through the web, but the correlation between website utilization and sales, overall sales, was 0.99. The customers who use your website are buying more through all channels. Okay,
Yeah.
so Lori's saying, can you please talk about AI? This is basic website info.
All right.
So thank you, Lori.
Can I just say, I just want to say one more thing.
Go ahead, Dave.
Just on
Go
the
ahead, Dave.
attribution. I think there was a fascinating statistic that maybe a lot of people have seen, but at the end of their fiscal year, end of 2022, Grainger reported in their statement that 75% of all orders had originated online. Weren't all placed online, but 75% had originated online. And we keep saying independent, you got to realize you're losing sales to somebody like a Grainger. And one thing we've got analytics on the site, what people are searching for, all of those things, but we've actually implemented where we connect HubSpot to the platform. Yeah. And in HubSpot, you can create workflows based upon events that somebody does on the site. And it could be, often is well before they've actually hit the purchase button. Hey, they showed interest in this. It could be you actually have a salesperson call the customer. It doesn't have to be an email, but I think it's all going to be about looking at activity on the site and then doing something with it. And that's electronic kind of enabled, but it could still result in a sales. But hey, we saw you looked at this machine tool. Yeah. Do you want, anyway, so I think that part of really using analytics that comes back now to AI.
Yeah, I mean, because AI-enabled analytics are on another level, right?
Right, exactly.
So in a broad way, let's talk about how AI is changing e-commerce technology. And some of that's still to come, right? But you guys both have technology roadmaps, or you've seen them. Where is it going? What are going to be the new AI-enabled technologies? What's available today, and how's it changing the game? Who wants to start?
Jacoby, you want to go?
I can kind of hit this one first. And where I see it really applicable day in and day out, and Lori, thanks for the question, is really the challenge of product data. Not everyone has an army of digital merchandisers and folks that can help fix product data. We'll call it enriched product data, romance copies, so to speak. And so if you're familiar with many of the PIMs or e-commerce systems, they will have AI functionality built in using, maybe Google or ChatGPT's functionality to say, here's a bunch of information about a product, create me 3 bullet points that's kind of romance copy about this. And so it certainly speeds things up, but I'm always a big kind of a cautionary tale where I think AI has gotten so far and so advanced that you can forget about how things actually work. Like, so I think there's a little bit of a gap of folks who know actually how things work, and then a lot of armchair experts being created with AI, which is going to be, we'll have that be a short-term problem. I rest assured that's going to happen. But I think to have it be a supplement is an amazing first step, where just like weightlifting, for example, and taking creatine or protein as a supplement, I think AI is a great example of that, where helping fix product data, helping fix with data integrity, things like that to a certain degree, it will help the operational side of, I could use 5 FTEs to do this. Well, maybe I just need 2 now, supplemented with AI, and it gets you 80% of the way there, kind of a situation. So product data is where I see day in and day out applicable use cases right now that considers that it's a safe bet. Again, with a cautionary where we don't want it to define safety data sheet stuff where it should be able to operate at this temperature. Yeah, we shouldn't have AI probably define that. Okay. So other stuff that has better search relevance, yes.
Excellent,
Yeah,
Dave.
no, yeah, I think building on the same theme, really, I think, generative AI, I would honestly say if you're not leveraging it in assisting with product information, marketing copy, you're already missing an opportunity because it's really straightforward. In our case, we implemented ChatGPT inside a blog article module on our platform. So you can create a blog within the platform. It's actually leveraging ChatGPT. You can write the question or the article title. You can say 500 words. You can say you want it funny, you want it professional. It generates the Google tags. So there's stuff like that is absolutely there now. I actually think what's interesting to watch, I come back to kind of the mega caps, but like Amazon, Microsoft, just go look on their websites. If you go look, for example, in AWS, what they're doing with AI, and it's all does come back to personalization and search, looking at the analytics around what people are doing, behaviors on a website. Back to what Jacoby said, it's going to influence search results that become more meaningful because they know who you are. So I think that is all coming. There's a lot of hype, and the reality is technology providers like us or ERP companies, whoever it is, have to put this in place. Most of it just doesn't kind of come out of thin air, right? There's a lot of hype. So there's kind of an obligation to work with your technology partners and really engage in what are they doing. And in our case, we are heavily vested in AWS from an architecture perspective. And I think we'll be leveraging that. But I do think the mega caps will play it. The investment required in infrastructure is massive to really make it effective. So I think there is dependence, and it's really important to pay attention to like what Microsoft is doing, Google is doing, Amazon, and as a technology provider, and then try and make it real. So
this has generated a couple of questions. Scott wants to know, isn't there a concern about using some of the generative AI tools to develop content for a website, knowing that some are using copyrighted information as the basis of their learning? I mean, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know the answer to this. Do you guys?
There's definitely some risk. I think we'll see how the risk materializes, honestly. Certainly if you're basing new copyright on owned copyright, that somebody else has, I think that has some risk associated with it. But right now, I think in its current form, and by the way, you've got to review what it generates. Don't just post it.
Right. I don't know that I have the expertise to answer this question. I don't know. Jacoby, you have anything to add to that?
No, from a legal standpoint, no, but I can certainly say there's always concerns about having your information out there that's just the same as everyone else's. We can clearly tell it was kind of came from the same source. So I think content and information that is unique to you out with a sample set of data, it has diminishing returns to it. So if you have a small sample data set, AI is not going to magically just create things for you. You do need kind of a confidence level there. So when it comes to things like pricing and inventory, AI analytics about what's the best price point from a floor ceiling inventory, you don't necessarily want to use other organizations' data, nor maybe would that be allowed from a pooled data set perspective. So you do need to have a large internal sample to go off of, kind of a situation. But when it comes to that gray area of loose content, think about it like music. Look at how much music's being created off of sample sets of things that are already done, and look at what legal problems that results in. Same difference here. And effectively, Do you want to be the same as everyone else? Customers do notice that this looks the same as this, and now you're back to just price shopping. Like your value proposition is based off price then. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
So, and
Right.
Andrew is saying, well, getting back to the question that JJ wrote, when you start modifying the data through the use of AI or other types of tools, does that change the ownership of the data? And are suppliers on board with having distributors and downstream customers modifying their product information? I mean, this is all
Well,
new ground, right? I don't know if anybody knows the answer to these questions.
No.
I think all I observe is Europe, not surprisingly, because Europe is often ahead in these kind of intellectual property discussions, and they are ahead of, I would say, of where the US at least is in regulating it, but it's very, very ill-defined still at this point. And it is a great question. Everybody's kind of asking themselves. You know, it's going to be an interesting challenge.
All right.
I mean,
So
it's like if you use it to develop software, who owns the software?
yeah, right.
Like
yeah, exactly.
product like marketing copy, it's a little less critical maybe. But anyway, it's definitely a significant challenge we all have to watch.
So AI has become a marketing term as much as a real technology, and it doesn't have a specific meaning, as you know. People argue about what it is. So if you're evaluating someone, a tech vendor's claims about AI, how do you know if it's real, and how important a factor does, is AI just an essential ingredient now, or is it like, well, sometimes it's important, sometimes it's not? How do you think through those choices when you're developing them for customers or you're working with tech partners on your own?
It's a good question. And so one of the big things, last year, Gartner did a really big study with CMOs that basically said only 29% of MarTech spend was utilized in technology. So, and why I say that is because a significant amount of technology is being purchased and vastly underutilized. And then when you talk about budgets, well, what do you use this for? Things don't go so well, right? So I think of AI oftentimes of that. So there's a lot of vendors, there's a lot of technology being created every single day. So it's a solution to maybe a problem you don't currently have. So I'm a stickler about identifying the problem space first and then applying the solution space to it versus the opposite, which has a significant amount of risk to it. Say, this is a solution to a problem. I don't know that we have it, but let's buy it for 3 years and figure it out after the fact. Yeah. Okay, if I know anything about B2B, it's more about stability and risk management than anything else. So
Right.
you need to identify the problem space first. If I see this shiny thing, I need to kind of mentally figure out how can it help us with a problem we currently have versus, and we'll figure that out after the fact. I think that's pretty dangerous to do, right? Sometimes that can work out. I'm not saying it can't, but I think that's a big piece. And Ian, to answer your direct question, I think just, hey, show me under the hood a little bit, right? Just, hey, I saw this come up and it did this thing, but can you kind of show me what the back can look like and have the technical folks go, yeah, that's just an if-then statement. There's nothing crazy about that,
Right.
or that's an if-then in an if-then statement. It's not complex. It's been around for 20 years. So is that really AI? I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
Dave,
No,
how
I
do you
think,
know if it's, how
yeah,
do
I
you know if
think
the AI is real? How important is it?
I think a lot of it isn't real. A lot of people are calling things AI that aren't AI.
Right.
I think actually maybe the right question at this point in time is to ask a vendor about a roadmap and does it sound kind of real? So the way we're thinking of AI is, I definitely wouldn't say, we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but we're thinking about, well, what pain points could it solve? And so we actually come back to personalization. I think if you're leveraging AI and looking at data and activity, it's going to drive that. We talked about search. I think it's going to improve search and watching patterns. We think with distribution, everybody's struggling with shipping rules and shipping costs, and shipping rules get more complex. You've got products in a basket. Maybe some of them are getting drop shipped. Maybe some's coming out your local warehouse. We think there's an opportunity around shipping costs, shipping rules. And we actually think there's a big opportunity, probably more kind of third-party enabled, but security and fraud that obviously can impact a website. So I think just talking about the roadmap and then is as important as unless you really say somebody really shows up and says, I'm doing this with AI, then to Jacoby's point, dive deep, like what is it really doing? Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Okay. So we're coming towards the end of our time, but I want to ask you a question that I didn't prep you for. So I'm going to put you on the spot. If you look down the road 5 years, what do you think are going to be the surprises in e-commerce, distributor e-commerce, whether it's technology, customer behavior, rates of adoption, types of AI that get applied? Do you have a prediction for our audience about what's going to happen over the next several years that may be different than what's happened in the past or maybe unexpected?
I think we see, great question, by the way. I think we see more distributors actually selling services along with products.
Mm.
And so if those services, let's say it's servicing a machine, could actually be a coffee machine in a break room, or it could be some industrial machinery. When you really tie in IoT, like sensing, I think it's going to enable distributors to engage more in services, which is a higher value offering and sticky. We see it a little bit already in distributors who are doing print management, that's been around for a while, those copiers and things in offices. But I think that's going to happen at a dramatic base and produce data that AI can analyze. And so I think that's one thing. And then the other thing is maybe not AI enabled, but back to what we said right at the start, I think we'll see the ability to sell more and more sophisticated products, or at least engage customers, maybe not the sale, but engage customers in evaluating and researching sophisticated products that need to be configured, could be unique, built to order, built to, create. So those are just the thoughts. I think that's kind of things we're looking at as we go forward.
What do you think, Jacoby?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. So one of the things I think about as someone who evaluates platforms and things like that on a regular basis, I think over the next couple of years, there will continue to be a consolidation of various platforms that take place. Oftentimes you will see, whether it's e-commerce or search or PIMS, they end up being somewhat of a commodity service, and it could be difficult to differentiate yourself among the pack, right? And so this one has a cart, checkout, catalog management, and other ones do. So oftentimes we look at it from a technology stack, like it's .NET, PHP, or JavaScript based kind of a situation, right? Because all of them can look fairly the same. And it coincides with maybe IT's governance model of we'd rather be in Azure and .NET shop versus PHP kind of a situation, right? And number two, so I see a consolidation happening there just by so many emergent things happening. By nature, only so many can survive because of market share. And then number two is I think everything is cyclical in technology. And so I think that the bad word used as a monolith sometimes shouldn't be used as a bad word. I think what happens is a lot of companies will realize the fully composable route, which I'm a fan of. A lot of companies, it's not the right way to go for them for their foreseeable future. The simplicity in the monolith from a technology architecture perspective, there's a lot of benefits to it, because I think you can trade off the simplicity of the monolith to go towards a fully composable thing where really you just end up in a kind of a vendor management situation more than anything. And so I think a lot of that is when organizations that I and Luminous Labs works with, they'll say we want to go fully composable. We start to dive in a little bit. Let me paint a picture what this actually looks like. Maybe not. You can grow into that though. You can grow into that, and that's fine. So I think a lot of that we'll use a different word than a monolith. We'll call it a super app or something like that, but it'll still be a monolith, right? So
all right. So we had someone jump in at the last second with a question. Can you please tell me how you handle out of territory / restricted customers? We are only authorized to distribute to certain areas, and a lot of times a person will place an order from an unauthorized area. What do you do in e-commerce to address that? Have you guys run into that problem before?
Yep, we run into it a lot. Jacoby, you want to go first?
Yeah. So, Danny, great question. Some things when I think about that, number one, it may be because of franchise agreements, like, hey, and you see this a lot in electrical distribution, for example, of, you can't really control if someone orders something from Alaska or not all the time, right? Or if they order it and then shipped it to Alaska, that's just out of your hands at that point. But I would say putting things again behind a login, have it be part of segmentation. You really have to be good about your governance of, is this product sellable to this kind of customer, whether it's a consumer, a business, government is really big into this in particular when it comes to contracts. And so when it comes to Dave's point about people who can log in and which folks are allowed to add to cart and which folks are allowed to check out. Sometimes those user roles and responsibilities are the right gatekeeping mechanism from a governance perspective to put in place versus you can create an account and just do whatever you want. So sometimes by nature, if it's a guest checkout that has a simple login not tied to a business, you may have to simplify your catalog to where they can't see those things that, or just have it grayed out. You can't add to cart. You can still see it in the catalog, but it's grayed out until they've associated themselves to a segment or customer in your peer, for example. So a lot of business rules that take place from a logic perspective.
Yeah, I think spot on. Definitely often behind a login. We have a customer that serves a major tire manufacturer across all its US manufacturing locations. And because of that, we actually, depending on where they're logging in from, but depending on the location they're buying for, will have a different catalog, usually driven by this logistics challenge. I would say the other thing we see is most independent distributors serve a fairly local geography, often with their own fleet of delivery.
Yeah.
But we have some customers where actually, they may have a private label product that they're selling. It's the greatest margin, but somebody tries to buy that product from out of state, and they can substitute an alternative that gets drop shipped. So they actually substitute the product and still make the sale. So it's all kind of possible, but definitely login and segmentation, and as Jacoby said, potentially showing different products because you've created a role for that out of geography customer. Yeah.
I love the question. It's something that I would mention. Like I love distributors who go direct to consumer and allow a guest checkout.
Yeah.
What I don't love is the logged in and non logged in being completely different websites. I like to have it be the same experience, just with when you log in, suddenly you see a few more buttons, you see a bigger catalog or not, right? I think that's the right approach. So
different role, different role with different permissions, guest versus.
Great. All right, guys, hang on for one more minute, please. Everyone in the audience, if you would. We've got a couple of programs coming up that I want to tell you about on February 14th, which is Valentine's Day. What could be more romantic than a distributor leader panel called How Distributors Are Building AI Capabilities? I'm hosting it, and two of our guests so far are Mike Powers, who's this dynamic, wonderful director of e-commerce and digital strategy at ARG Industrial, formerly Alaska Rubber Group. And an old friend of mine from many years ago, I still keep in touch with, Steve Cosgrove, who's the CEO and founder of Cosgrove Partners. They own several distribution companies. Steve's a very thoughtful guy. This is going to be a great discussion about how distributors have really built some AI capabilities. And then on February 21st, we'll have the Wholesale Change Show. That's our webcast podcast with the Chief Marketing Officer of the new Brady Plus, Ian Gresham. He's got a great first name, of course. Hey, Dave, Jacoby, what a rich and wonderful discussion. Thank you so much for being our guest today.
Oh, thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for attending. Hope you enjoy a lot of digital success, and call Dave or Jacoby if you need some help. And until then, be well and be nice to each other. Bye now.
Bye.